Hello heathens and welcome to my channel. I know you see cards in front of you. This is not a pick a card reading today by any means or measure, and I was originally planning on doing a beauty look today, but every single time I close my eyes to try to contemplate and figure out what kind of beauty look I would do for this subject, cards kept popping up in my head, and every single time I tried to think of any way that I could do a design or anything of that nature, the cards just kept being more vocal. So whenever I'm guided to do that, I have to honor that, and I guess they want to help me discuss a very important subject with you today. As you may have seen by the title, today I wanted to delve into something that I've sort of touched on in a variety of videos over time, called shadow work. And if you've watched my other videos, you've probably heard me mention this term before, and a vague application of what that means. But with current world events, and although this is a timeless reading that can be watched at for any time, it is being filmed during the 2020 pandemic. And a lot of people are currently dealing with a lot of isolation, depression, and being called to do shadow work. Now, shadow work isn't just a spiritual term, it's actually one that is applied in psychology as well. And the term shadow work basically means facing, acknowledging, recognizing, and healing from the things that we don't necessarily want to see in ourselves. Because, let's face it, none of us are perfect. You know, we live in a world where people want to focus only on positive thinking and only on, you know, fluffy bunnies shooting rainbows out their butts, and that's not what the real world is. It just is not. And because of that, we have to sometimes deal with the things that we don't want to see, or we don't want to see in ourselves, because every single person in the world has a dark side. And I know I'm paraphrasing, and I don't know what tribe, so don't ask me. But there's this thing that I frequently see going around on social media that is a Native American saying that within each person exists two wolves. One is a white wolf and one is a dark wolf. And I believe the grandson asks the grandfather and says, well, which one wins, or which one do you become? And the grandfather replies, it depends on the one you feed. And while that is true, and I like to believe and hope that people are inherently good, it really depends on which side of yourself you're feeding. And now, keep in mind that black wolf doesn't necessarily mean it's bad. It's just another side of you. Just like in magical practices, there is a huge misnomer that dark magic or black magic is somehow evil or negative or bad. And it is not. It is just another wavelength of energy. It is very much like, you could even see here, figure full moon and new moon. It's the same moon, but what shines through depends on where it is in its phase. And it's the same with the yin yang. Within the darkness, there's always light. Within the light, there's always darkness. And I remember one day I shared to my Facebook page, not the one affiliated with Beauty Heathen, but with my other pagan page, something talking about white magic. And it was very clear that these people were social justice keyboard warriors and likely very new to the path, and said that the post was racist. In no way, make, shape, or form realizing that white magic or light magic literally means daylight. Dark magic or black magic usually means night. They're the same energy, just two different wavelengths. The same is applicable when it comes to dealing with your shadow side. And within all of us, we hold aspects of ourselves that we don't necessarily want to see, we don't necessarily want to deal with, we don't want to recognize within ourselves. And the only way to truly become whole and to become a unified source, to be able to kind of check yourself when you're doing something that's not necessarily pleasant, is to do the shadow work. And not only that, but shadow work helps you if you are somebody who has especially dealt with trauma in your life. I have mentioned before, and I've spoken on this before, that I am someone who has gone through extensive lifelong trauma. And I literally mean that has happened my entire life. I have been through situations where I was stalked. I have been through an attempted rape. I was physically abused as a child. I have been emotionally abused my entire life. People look at the things that I post, or they see what I have, and they think that my life is perfect, or that I'm privileged in some way, which I'm not getting into the racial part at all, but what they don't know or see is the cost that I have gone through in an effort to exist and survive. Survive my life, survive my daily abusive hell. But it is something that I struggle with each day, and I'm not perfect. No one is. Everybody has their own stuff that they're carrying around. And with that comes the need to reflect on it, to deal with it, and to try to heal from it. And it's not easy. It takes a lot of time, and sometimes you may feel the need to go to therapy. Forgetting oneself. Poignant that that card came up. We try to bury things. Alone in the world. Revenge. We may have undealt with anger issues that come out in a variety of ways, whether we recognize them or not. The anger that we may be carrying around for people who have hurt us in the past and unintentionally unleash that on unsuspecting people years later. Or holding on to that anger and seeking revenge towards the person who hurt us. Forgetting oneself largely has to deal with trying to bury it all down and not deal with it. At least wise, that's the feeling I'm getting in this particular reading. But what we don't recognize is that does us more harm. And when it comes to doing shadow work, although you may have a therapist, you may have a trusted friend that you talk to while going through this, primarily this is a task that you have to take on yourself. The child I was meant to be. Perhaps you've endured some sort of physical abuse in your childhood. Calling a storm, that's inner rage. I'm going based off the pictures. I'm not looking up the meanings of these specific cards right now. I'm just intuitively going based off of imagery, things that I'm sensing. Fated to suffer, you may feel like the burdens that you're carrying on, you may feel like you're carrying the weight of the world, and you just seem to feel like no matter what you do, you're constantly carrying this weight around. Put on a mask to the world, masquerade. Pretend everything's okay when it's not. Artificial heart, that's another one, pretending everything's okay when it's not. Going through the motions. Sacrificing yourself for everything and everyone else just so that you don't have to face it and you don't have to deal with it at all because you don't want to. Envious gluttony, perhaps you may have weight issues where you're eating your feelings. Perhaps it may just be that you're feeling envious towards other people for the happiness that they may have, or the life that they may have that you see, because you don't know what they're carrying around too. And just holding on to that envy. Naked before the stars. I know this has a different meaning. I have watched Aphrodite's readings before, but when this card came down, the first thing that came to mind was, in order to really help yourself deal with these things, you have to literally lay your soul bare. You have to bear it naked to the universe, to somebody you trust. I'm not saying physically naked, I'm just saying you have to allow yourself to face it, vocalize it, release it and bring it to the surface. And that doesn't just mean any past traumas. I've caught myself at times, I'll see things online in the moment that I feel very passionate about, and then I'll look back at things and I'll check myself for my own hypocrisy. I'll observe it and I'm like, man, I was really a hypocrite there. That's not usually who I am. And that's not what I stand for. That's not what I've always said that I stand for. But yeah, I was a hypocrite in that moment. Because we all have those moments. We all have them. Downcast pride. This whole process is about stripping away your ego. That facade that we put on not only to the world but to our own selves with that masquerade. Pretending that everything's okay. Everything's perfect. You may feel trapped in circumstance, either trapped by some flaw that you may have or notice within yourself that you don't want to recognize as a flaw, or you may feel trapped in a situation or by some traumatic event. Temple of my body, you may have let yourself go. You may not be taking as much care of yourself as you should be. Parasite. Here's what thing that most people do not recognize is when they have all of these unresolved issues and all of these unresolved things, frequently, not always, but frequently, you can be toxic for other people. And many times it's unintentionally. We do have the situations where we have internet trolls who do and say nasty and horrifyingly horrible things just because they want attention, and they don't care what kind of attention it is that they get. They just want that attention and they feed off of it. That's parasitic behavior. So is lashing out at people or thrusting things at people, even if unintentionally you don't mean to hurt them. Sometimes we do. Blinded to the pain. Not dealing with it, trying to bury it. Is this me? That self-doubt, that questioning yourself, that when you start this process, you will start questioning yourself. You will start questioning and saying, am I really a good person? Am I really good for other people to be around? Am I really good to be even in the world in any way? It's a hard thing to face. Seeing, acknowledging, and admitting your own imperfections. But in doing so, it allows you to kind of catch yourself when you're starting to, or even when you have done something or said something that was like, yeah, that was not my best moment. It allows you that introspection and that ability to reflect on your humanity. You're just being a normal human being with flaws and all. Black flower fragrance. I'm not going to lie, you are going to be in that position where it's like, fuck everything. This isn't fair. And if you are especially somebody who has dealt with traumas and things of that nature, it's not fair that you went through these things. It is not okay that you went through these things. And the very first thing you need to hear and recognize is it was not your fault. It wasn't fair. And it wasn't okay. The things that you have gone through are not your fault. The traumatic events, even if it wasn't necessarily another person's fault in the moment, sometimes horrible things just happen. And no matter what you do in your life, no matter how hard you may try to shield yourself or protect yourself from bad things happening to you or to others, sometimes they just do, no matter what you try. And that's not your responsibility. And that is not your burden to bear. Queen of my world, this is about recognizing pride, recognizing that if you have potentially moments of inflated ego, recognizing it, dealing with it, shedding it off. I won't cry for you if you have unresolved anger issues, or you wish other people ill. One of the most horrifying things that I have frequently seen people say to one another is wishing them death, wishing them pain, telling them you hope that they harm themselves in some way. And every time I see it, I call that person out and I'm like, that is not an okay thing to say, because you never know what someone's going through or what someone has gone through. And no matter how mad or upset you are at somebody, there is a line you should not cross. And that is definitely one of those moments where it's like, you shouldn't wish for people to suffer. There's enough of it going around in the world. And there's enough of it that we don't need to wish it upon people, even if it's someone you don't like. When you're going through this process, colorless angel, there will be times that you feel completely and totally drained. You will feel empty. You will feel hollow. And a lot of that has to do with when things are coming to the surface, and as they're slowly being dealt with and slowly being released, it will be very shocking to the system. And it will take time as that weight slowly gets lifted off you for you to go through the shock of that. Yeah, this card very much seems reminiscent of shocking experience to me. So yeah. These are all things that you may go through. I mean, you can go through anger and chains. You can try to distract yourself from dealing with things with obsessions or focusing on other people or other things. It's about facing your regrets, dealing with lies told to you, lies you've told. And fragmentation. I am using the cards to kind of help me guide you. Shadow work is not about breaking yourself apart. Not in a permanent manner, anyway. Shadow work is very much about dealing with things one at a time so that you can go from being fragmented to reintegrated and whole. So while it is a process where you may have to say, okay, today I need to deal with this aspect of my past, this aspect of my personality, this behavior that I've exhibited that I'm not necessarily happy I did, and you take it piece by piece. With each piece that you deal with each part that you heal or recognize or call yourself out on, it allows you to slowly put the pieces back together and reintegrate everything at the end of it. Peaceful among the thorns is, yeah. This process is not an easy one. There are gonna be times when you feel shattered, crying, gut-wrenched, especially if it comes to dealing with past traumas that you've tried to bury or didn't want to deal with or face. But you will come through it, and no matter what crap is going on around you, no matter what crap left you have to deal with each piece that you deal with, you're gonna, this again reminds me of reintegration, so it's kind of funny that came up after fragmentation. You start to become more whole again. You may have to apologize to people that you've wronged. Sometimes giving atonement helps with the shadow work side of it. Perchance to dream. Sometimes things will come up in your dreams, and especially when doing shadow work, I highly recommend you keep a journal next to your bed or wherever you sleep, so that if you have a dream and you remember it when you wake up, you need to write it down. Because in psychology, and a lot of times even in spirituality, the things that we dream are our subconscious's way of trying to work through things. And by writing down the dream, it allows you to look things up. There are a lot of online resources for dream dictionaries and things of that nature, and the psychological aspects of different types of dreams, and they can help you evaluate what it is you dreamt and allow you to get to the bottom of why you dreamt it and what is underneath that dream that caused it. Today for tomorrow. Well, this is usually about, or frequently about, sacrificing something today or dealing with it later. In this case, I get more of the feeling of dealing with this now will allow you a better future and allow things to be better for you in the future, not just in recognizing your own toxic behavior at times, because we all do it, not just in recognizing and healing from traumatic events in your past, but also allowing you the ability to self-evaluate and bring yourself a new level of self-awareness. And if you are somebody who is going through some form of ascension, shadow work can also be a part of that. Because in order to ascend, you have to deal with the nitty-gritty stuff underneath it. The last two cards are hiding your true self, which comes with masquerade and everything. The other one is addicted, which, you know, using anything to distract yourself. Be it media, be it television, be it Netflix, be it other substances. Many times people who become addicted to things are really trying to bury trauma. And many times they are trying to... It's a form of escapism a lot of the time. Especially those who imbibe in narcotics, or those who may imbibe in too much alcohol. Granted, addiction doesn't have to be a substance. It could be anything that you just become obsessively wanting to, you know, just dive right into day after day after day after day without, just so you don't have to deal with things, just so you don't have to face things. It's a form of escapism, no matter what the medium is. So, in order to best go through that, I'll try to delve into my first stage of shadow work when I went through it. I've mentioned on this channel a few times already that I met my twin flame a few years ago. And at the time that I met him, I had been carrying around a lot of stuff that were things that I didn't really talk about, and only a very few people closest to me knew about. This is actually one of the very first times that I'm openly discussing this on a platform, and trust me when I say I'm nervous about it, because the person who abuses me sometimes tunes in. So hopefully this isn't one of them. But when I first encountered him, I hadn't even really met him. Something happened that I felt like this internal explosion, and it was literally like the dam broke loose. And all of a sudden, every single past trauma I had ever been through came to the surface in full rapid force. You know, kind of, if you've seen Frozen 2 when the dam literally broke and it all came rushing out, that's literally what happened to me. And no matter how hard I tried to bury it back down, it didn't work. And I literally felt like I was losing my mind. I really did. I felt like I couldn't get a firm grip on anything. And the more I tried to resist it, the more I fought it, the worse it got. And the worse it got, the more I felt like I was just absolutely getting destroyed from the inside out. Till finally, I said, okay, I have to really just deal with this. I have to succumb. I have to surrender, because if I don't, I'm gonna lose it. Deceit. Self-deceit, other people deceiving you. I'll get into the cards after I lay them all out. And I isolated myself from everybody, except for one person, maybe two. And every day when I got home, I isolated myself as much as I could. And I allowed myself to go back in time from my earliest traumatic memory and relive it over again. And I put myself in that space, in that headspace of reliving it. Not from an observational standpoint, but actually going through it over again. And what that allowed me to do is, with each event, with each painful memory, once that memory passed, I allowed myself to kind of project my current self and go back and give that child a hug and tell her it wasn't her fault and that she didn't deserve it and that she didn't do anything wrong. And I did that slowly with each event. And with that, the burden and the heaviness of those traumatic events slowly became lighter and lighter and lighter. And I went on and I went through this for about 3 months. And I'm not gonna lie, I lost friends during this process. People who weren't willing to wait for me to heal from what I was dealing with. People who didn't understand. These were people that I thought would always be there. 4th chakra. Heart chakra. That's where it always hits. It's funny how 2 financial things come up. Another thing that will sometimes you will notice is a shift in your finances in these types of events. They're not necessarily a trigger, but I know for me, sometimes when my depression is flaring up, I have a tendency to overspend, which is my issue that I'm trying to deal with. But acknowledging it is the first part of the battle. So you may recognize that you may overspend. Magician in the mirror, you may feel like your abilities or your intuition becomes magnified. And as time goes on, you'll see that there's other possibilities and other things in front of you that you didn't necessarily see before. Abundance can come in. And that doesn't necessarily mean financial abundance, although it is next to man holding a coin. And woman holding a coin. Wow, hello, money, money, money. Okay. But, you know, it's just, it's a difficult process, but it's a difficult process that as you start to slowly come through it, it's worth it. And allowing yourself that introspection and allowing yourself to slowly heal wounds that you're carrying around really helps you shift your life in a better direction. And that adjacent possibilities card came up. Frequently, what happens is the burdens that we bear, the burdens that we carry with us, often keep us trapped like a bride in a cage in circumstances that we've outgrown or circumstances that aren't for us anymore, or they allow us to settle for things that we don't deserve. They allow us to put up with behavior that we shouldn't, because some part of us, that inner wounded side of our soul, has lied to us deceit and told us somewhere along the way that we deserve it when we don't. And with everything that's going on in the world right now, dealing with the things every day that keep coming up, this is the perfect time for you to go through shadow work. Because you have the time, you can choose not to have the distractions. And you can really allow yourself to do that inner work that either you didn't have time for before, there were too many distractions before, real world events that kept your attention focused elsewhere, and right now you're sitting at home. New start is coming. As you do shadow work, like I said, your burdens start to fall away slowly. Depending on the traumas, depending on the things that you're holding on to, it may help. And if you can't afford seeing a psychologist or a therapist of some sort, there's always the ability to talk to somebody who is a very trusted friend. And for me, it really helped to have one person that allowed me to write down every single traumatic experience with, that I knew I could trust them. I knew they wouldn't judge me. And I knew that they would just let me get it out. Like a written form of verbal diarrhea. And in doing so, not only did she listen, but when I needed it most, she was able to give me insight. New moon, everything is new beginnings. Fiery climax. Delving into shadow work is very much like a phoenix process. You are tearing apart the things that you're holding on and tearing into them to be rebirthed anew. So it's kind of appropriate that full moon in Aries, which is a fire sign, and it literally says a fiery climax approaches, popped up. Now, shadow work is not just a linear process. It is not just something you do once and it's over with. And it says for your commitment is being tested, but basically what that means is, especially when it comes to deep-seated issues, it is a process that you go through more than once. You may be fine for a time, and after you go through that initial shocking experience, take a break. Because you will have done a lot of heavy work. And even if you feel like while you're in the midst of it, it's getting too heavy, allow yourself a distraction to come up for air. Because the purpose of shadow work is not to allow it to swallow you whole. It's so that you can deal with the hole and start slowly filling it in and planting new seeds to get better. Okay? So it's going to be challenging. It's going to be a long process. It may not be something that you want to deal with, but you're very close to achieving your goal. In doing so, it allows these new beginnings to start coming into light. It says a new star is coming, new romantic cycle begins, you're very close to achieving your goal. And step out of your comfort zone. North Node. All of these things, from journaling, meditating, all of these things to help with the self-healing process are going to be what changes and shifts your life. You and your loved ones are safe. In this process, it's important to remember, especially if you allow yourself to go back in time mentally, to re-experience traumatic events. And again, this is what worked for me. If that is something that may not work for you, I recommend speaking with a trained therapist or someone to help you, because I fully recognize that not all traumas can be faced and dealt with on your own. Sometimes you need that external help in order to help guide you through it. Because sometimes there are things that you just... The brain is a very wondrous and mysterious thing. Some people remember all of their traumas. Some people compartmentalize and bury things down. Some people, their brain literally works in a way because what our subconscious seeks to do is protect us from painful memories many times. And in order to allow you to keep going and compartmentalize and do all that kind of thing, sometimes it takes those memories and it locks them away, and you can actually get a form of amnesia sometimes. Because it is the brain's way of protecting itself. It's its way of protecting you. And sometimes the only way that those things can come out and come to the surface is with the help of a trained professional. So that's another thing to keep in mind. That may be an aspect that you may want to delve into later when things are getting a little bit better and perhaps you have a little bit more money. Although I think, depending on what social services come up for people who are currently displaced, some of that may include psychological assistance, especially for people who are feeling very isolated. Stay. Think about it. Love yourself. That's the overall goal in this, is not only healing, But in loving yourself, you accept yourself for who you are, flaws and all. And when I say love yourself, I don't mean like narcissism, stare at yourself in a mirror and go, don't I look perfect every single day? Or think you are the center of the world. That's not how it works. But in loving yourself largely means not holding yourself to a higher standard than you would anyone else. If you are someone who recognizes that we are all human and we are all fallible and we all make errors, have errors in judgment, make mistakes, whether it be once or more than once, and you are not the kind of person who expects anyone to be perfect at all. You have to allow yourself to accept yourself for your own imperfections. And in that, you are loving yourself. Have compassion with yourself. Self-care. Like I said, there will be times when this is going to be really heavy and you say, you know what, I just can't deal with it for tonight. I need something else. That's okay. Treat yourself to something good. With each little stepping stone that you get a little bit better, I want you to congratulate yourself or reward yourself in some way, because it's going to only serve as reinforcement to help you keep going through this process. Could be something that is therapeutic for you or helps you delve into things, is some sort of creative outlet, be it cosmetics, painting, writing, pottery, sculpting, basketry, making Fabergé eggs or Ukrainian Easter eggs, whatever the medium. Allow yourself to be creative. Draw. I know when I was in high school, one thing that sort of had opened the door before I slammed it back shut again was I wrote poetry, and the moment I picked up a pen and I started writing, it just started pouring out of me. And I remember my poetry teacher in high school, she had given us an assignment to write something like 10 poems, and I wrote over 30 of them because I found writing to be my catharsis. And now that has kind of evolved from just poetry to writing my own spells to songwriting. And sometimes I find other creative outlets, like when I do the beauty aspect on my channel, sometimes just coloring a head for a bit is my creative outlet. Look through the situation. Remember, no matter how deep and dark it gets, there is always a light at the end of it. In doing so, you manifest for yourself a brighter and better future. I've posted so many things on this channel about releasing things that no longer serve you. And while those rituals and those tactics are very helpful, you have to understand that sometimes, in order for those things to be released, you need to do the work in order to release them. You can sit there all you want and mentally give your burdens to Archangel Michael to take away from you never to return and have him let the universe transmute them into positive energy all you want until you are blue in the face. But if you are carrying deep-seated stuff, no matter how many mental exercises you do with that, it's not going to get better until you actually do the work and face it. But in doing so, you manifest that release, and you manifest that planting new seeds for a better future. Recognizing that you are loved, not just loving yourself, but that the universe, your guides, your guardians, if you are someone who follows a monotheistic pathway, God, Yahweh, Allah, if you are atheist, you are loved by your friends and family. The universe loves you. And with that receiving of love, you are then able to send love back out to others. You may end up helping guide others the way I'm trying to help and guide you in this. You may become someone who is a counselor for others. You may become someone who is just eager to help people in some way. There's with the dreams. Pray. When it feels too heavy, when it feels like you can't take it anymore, pray to whomever or whatever helps. Praying doesn't even necessarily have to be an actual physical prayer. It could be reaching out to a friend and just saying, "Dear God, I can't take it anymore," and just releasing your burdens. Mother Mary, it's about maternal. It's another card where I feel like someone taking care of you. In this process, and I'll try to link it up here somewhere, you are going to start becoming more open to things, and with that comes the need to really start delving into empathic shielding. And because as you release the dark and twisty things that we hold within us, we don't want to absorb more from other people. So I will link that video in here so that you practice that exercise to protect yourself. Rely on your friends. See how apologize came back up again? You already know. Authority. I'm feeling last three. Ask for signs. Focus on your health, your well-being. Shower, bathe, brush your teeth. Try to eat a little bit healthier. Try to get a little bit of exercise. And acceptance. Accept yourself for who you are, how you are. Just do your best to recognize yourself, that you are human, and no matter what, we all have our own fair share of shit. And although it is not an easy thing to deal with, you can do it. I have faith in you. And I'm sorry this video has gone on so long, but it was one of those that every so often I feel it's important to really delve into the deep, dark, and twisty aspects of not only healing, but delving into the inner facets of our being and focusing a light on the things that we don't want to see and we don't want to deal with. And because of that, sometimes it's going to end up in a longer video. But before you go, and before I do my closeout, I want to leave us with a few positive affirmations from the Whispering Woods deck. Okay. Woods. Be like the woods, calm, soothing, mysterious, and full of life. Change. Falling leaves do not signify the end, but the beginning of a fruitful season. Kind of appropriate. Time. Embrace in the dewdrops of life before they disappear with the morning sun. So I get the feeling with time that's telling you the time is now to deal with this. While you have the time, because we have no choice but to have the time right now, now is when you need to start working on this. Caution, tread softly so as not to disturb the woodland floor. I get the feeling with that one, it has more to do with making sure that when you need a break, take it. Surprises under the most ordinary stone is an undisturbed garden. And opportunities unfurl like a fern even without warm sunlight. Let me do one card a basket is given. If you have not seen me use this deck before, I have to shuffle it with my eyes closed because every single card is different. Actually, I don't, yeah. Accidentally grab the cards that you shouldn't grab. They always put like 1 or 2 extras in each box that usually give a blurb about something, be it the author or whatnot. But obviously it's not a card that's actually going to tell you anything. I just want to leave this on a positive note. And this is always a deck that I can rely on for that. Because there's always hope. And no matter what struggles you're currently enduring, things can and will get better. And facing that shadow side is a good portion of that. The world has forced us to slow down. Current events have forced us all to take more time for introspection and focusing on the things that we don't necessarily want to see. Which is why it's the perfect time to do it. And with that, whatever I can imagine, the universe can deliver. And you may want to take a screenshot of this so that when things feel too heavy, you can have this card. And I will read the back. It says, if you have the ability to imagine it or even to think about it, this universe has the ability and the resources to deliver it fully unto you. For it is like a well-stocked kitchen with every ingredient imaginable at your disposal. So keep in mind, with the shadow work comes infinite possibilities of every single thing you want and wish for and dream to have. Okay? So anyway, I hope this video, I can't even say reading, but video, brings you some assistance in some way, and it allows you to have some sort of guidance as to how to go through the process. If you ever need more help or more guidance, I am available. Just let me know in the comments down below, or reach out to me on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. If you don't want to make it a public comment, my DMs are open on Twitter, my messages are open on Instagram, and my messages are open on Facebook. And that way we can communicate one-on-one privately, so no one can see what you have to say. But I am here. And anyway, with that, I am sending you all the love and hugs in the world. I am wishing you good health, safety, happiness, and a smooth process with delving into your shadow work. And until next time, I wish you the brightest of blessings, and blessed be.